can prepare us for next year. So you have, during the implementation phase, you should know whether you're effective or not. And it's only necessary to collect actual process data and chart it just as you charted the original problem. So we said we have a problem because, say, there's been an increase in quality problems, and we need to reduce the gap between where we are in defects and where we want to be in defects, 30% less. And then we're going to chart defects and see if we're getting closer to the 30% reduction. So it's pretty straightforward statistically to chart how you're doing. And then you're going to get two levels of results. If you aren't successful, first of all, you may, in fact, for example, theorize that one cause of quality problems is weak standardized work. And you develop better standardized work and you build in quality key points, and that's going great, and you're getting great standardized work, and you're training people, and they're following the key points, and you're monitoring how they're following the key points, and they're adhering to the standardized work. And that's all going well, but it's possible that your defects aren't going down. That would suggest that your belief that the root cause was in standardized work and the training process was just a bad theory, bad hypothesis. So we might reject the hypothesis that the root cause we thought was the root cause was correct, or we might reject the hypothesis that developing the standardized work in a certain way is a good way to develop the standardized works. So it could be in the process, or it could be in the link between what we think is that process or driver of the root cause and what actually is the root cause. So it's very important to reflect on the process, and that should happen at regular intervals. The shorter the better. You have daily huddles, weekly meetings. You shouldn't wait till the end. And then second of all, you should be paying as much attention, at least, to how people are being developed as you're paying to what results technically we're achieving. The purpose of Ocean Connery is actually both business results for Toyota and also people development. You're stretching people at targets, and you're teaching them and guiding them and coaching them to follow PDCA in these small cycles. And if people aren't really following PDCA, but somehow you get the results, mainly because the leader is very clever, or you have a clever engineer who comes up with one great solution, then you've achieved the results, but nobody's really been developed except maybe that one engineer or that one manager. So you failed on people development, even though you succeeded on getting results. This is a picture that we developed in the Toyota Way to Continuous Improvement, and that ties this together. It starts with the purpose, and the purpose should be both what do we want to accomplish for the business and what do we want to accomplish in developing our people. Then to achieve that purpose, we need to define the ideal state. We need to break down the ideal state into more small, manageable pieces, and for those pieces we're going to set a target, and the target could be results, like, for example, cost reduction, or say a productivity improvement that's measurable, and it also could be a condition. So, for example, if scrap and rework is a driver, we may want the condition to be that the scrap bin is empty 98% of the time, and that's something people can see and give a sort of visceral picture of how we're doing in this process that we think is leading to the outcome we want. When we define the target, and it's very, very clear and easy to understand by all the people doing work, by all the people who are managing the process, then we are at the current state, and we're going to try our first step on implementing the countermeasure that may be, say, in one workstation, and we're going to do a PDCA loop, and we're going to find out what happened to that one workstation, and that will inform our next step, which may modify what we did in the first workstation based on what we learned. So each of these smaller iterations, maybe they're daily, maybe they're weekly, is, again, running a small experiment, and we're learning something that's getting close to the target. Like Thomas Edison talked about the thousands of light bulbs that failed, and he said every light bulb that failed was successful because it taught us one more thing that doesn't work. So you're learning as much from failure as success, as long as you always have your eye on the target, and as long as your work is very directed and you know why you're doing what you're doing. And when you have the failures, you decide what you learned so that you try the next PDCA loop informed by that failure. And then step by step, you're getting closer and closer to the target. Creative tension between a big target, like a 30% reduction, and where you're at is what drives the challenge. The gap makes it challenging, difficult, but you need to have confidence, and some of that confidence comes from having a good coach who actually could solve the problem, and you know they could solve the problem, but they're going to guide you through solving the problem. And that helps you get confidence. Then the more times that you go through this process of achieving challenging targets, the more confident you become. So the next problem at some point seems impossible, but you're not concerned about it because you know you have a great process, and through PDCA you will get there, even though you don't know now how you will get there. Then we talk often in the ACT stage, in the final stage, about spreading best practices. I was at a company yesterday, Dover Energies, and in one of the divisions, they're very interested in how to define spreading best practices. In this particular business unit, they don't want to mindlessly copy what one group happens to do that works. They want everybody in other groups to be thinking about what's best for them. And they're asking that question. If somebody does something good and they write an A3 report, should that become the new standard that everybody must follow? And my answer was no, absolutely not. Because even in one plant that makes the same product, there's many different processes, and there's different kinds of equipment, even though it's the same, perhaps, equipment on the surface. It was made at different times, designed in different ways, and what you do in one instance may fit that context very well, not a different situation. So a best practice is kind of a misnomer. It's the best practice that a particular group came up with today in order to act as a countermeasure to the root cause of the problem that they have discovered. That's the best practice for them right now until they come up with a better best practice. And the term best suggests that there's nothing better, so that would end Kaizen. So what Toyota uses instead as the Japanese term yokoten, which does mean spread everywhere, but in Japan they often use nature analogies, and the nature analogy in this case is transplanting a bonsai tree. And if the environment isn't perfect for that particular bonsai tree, then the bonsai tree will die, or it will grow in weird ways and won't look so beautiful. And you have to maintain it and keep on working at it to improve it and adapt to the problems that the tree experiences as it grows. So it's an adaptive learning survival process, not just sticking in the ground process. If you went to Japan and bought one of these trees and they looked beautiful and you took it home and planted it in your backyard, there's a reasonable chance it will die because there's very particular conditions of soil and the environment that are necessary, and you haven't prepared the soil properly, and it you have to adapt your environment so that the bonsai tree will flourish and do well. So similarly, again, with the best practice, what Toyota will do is they will share what people try as countermeasures that work, and they'll share them with others that may have similar problems, and they'll share the problem, the reason they chose that countermeasure, what the root cause was, and then what happened. And then that is an input to your group, and you can filter it out and say it's not really relevant to my problems right now, or you can say, hey, that's an interesting idea, we have a problem like that. And then you still have to go through the PDCA process, and then in that process you may use that solution, you may not use it, you may use a piece of that solution and modify it. Ideally, you will improve upon it. So in Toyota they say, if we enforce best practice sharing, we will kill Kaizen.